Texas is a land rich with history, and with that history comes tales of the unexplained. In this video, we'll dive into the mysteries of some of Texas's most haunted locations. Imagine a haunted railroad track where strange phenomena defy explanation, a home built on an old battlefield that echoes with the unrest of spirits long past, and a ghostly lady who lingers by a lake, her tragic story woven into the very waters. These eerie locations have left countless visitors chilled to the bone, blending Texas's storied past with a touch of the supernatural. Whether it's whispers of the paranormal or shadows of history that draw you in, one thing's for sure: these haunted places will captivate your imagination. So, turn up the volume and join us as we uncover the stories and secrets behind these haunted locations. Will you dare to explore them? The San Antonio Ghost Tracks. In the heart of San Antonio, Texas, there's a place where history, tragedy, and the supernatural collide, a haunting that has captured the imaginations of locals and visitors alike for decades. This eerie location, known as the San Antonio Ghost Tracks, is a site where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur. It is here, amidst the quiet hum of modern-day traffic and the occasional whistle of passing trains, that the spirits of a tragic past are said to linger, protecting and haunting all who dare to venture close. The story of the San Antonio Ghost Tracks begins in the 1930s, a time when a sense of innocence and safety surrounded the lives of children. On one fateful day, a school bus filled with young students was making its way across town. As it approached the railroad tracks, the bus suddenly stalled. The driver, desperate to get the bus restarted, frantically turned the key, trying to bring the engine back to life. But time was running out. As the driver worked to restart the engine, a train barreled down the tracks, its whistle piercing the air as it grew nearer and nearer. The train was too fast, too close, and the collision was inevitable. The devastating crash claimed the lives of the children aboard the bus. The tragedy shook the community to its core. It wasn't just the loss of young lives that left a lasting impact. It was the way in which those lives were lost. The image of those innocent children trapped, helpless, and unable to escape the oncoming train lingered in the minds of all who heard the story. But the tale didn't end with the tragic deaths. As time went on, strange occurrences began to be reported in the area. The spirits of the children, it seemed, had never truly left. Their souls were bound to the tracks, unable to rest and ever watchful, still tied to the place where their lives had been so abruptly and violently cut short. One of the most chilling encounters at the San Antonio Ghost Tracks involves a driver who was lucky, or perhaps unlucky, enough to experience the full extent of the haunting. The driver had heard the stories, of course, but like many others, they were skeptical. Thinking it was all just a local myth, they decided to park their car at the crossing late one evening, curious to see what would happen. They shifted the car into neutral and waited in the stillness of the night, their eyes fixed on the tracks ahead. The moon was full, casting long shadows across the ground. The only sound was the occasional rustling of wind and the distant hum of traffic. As the driver sat there, a strange noise caught their attention. A faint knock on the car window. They turned to look, half expecting to see another car, but instead, they found something far more disturbing. Standing at the edge of the tracks, no more than a few feet away, was a small figure. The child appeared to be wearing a school uniform, just like the children who had died all those years ago. The figure was small and ghostly, almost translucent, and it stood silently staring at the driver. The driver, frozen in shock, blinked once, twice. But when they looked back, the figure had vanished, leaving nothing but the emptiness of the tracks behind. Shaken to the core, the driver quickly started the car and left the area. But the image of the child standing silently at the edge of the tracks, would stay with them for years to come. What makes the San Antonio ghost tracks so unsettling is the uncertainty that lingers. Are the spirits of the children truly there to protect the living, guiding them away from the tracks in a final act of kindness? Or are they trapped, forever reliving their tragic deaths, unable to move on to the afterlife? Some believe that the spirits of the children are acting as guardians, preventing others from meeting the same grim fate they did all those years ago. Others, however, think that the ghosts are trapped in a purgatory, reliving their deaths over and over again, unable to find peace. The truth may never be known, and perhaps that is what makes the legend of the San Antonio ghost tracks so enduring. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, there's no denying the power of the stories that surround this haunting location. The San Antonio ghost tracks remain a place of mystery and fear, a chilling reminder of a past tragedy that refuses to be forgotten, and a powerful testament to the lingering presence of the past. If you ever find yourself in San Antonio, be sure to take a drive by the tracks. But remember, if you stop, be careful. You may not be alone. The Black Swan Inn. Not far from the infamous San Antonio ghost tracks lies a place where the past comes alive in the most chilling ways. The Black Swan Inn. This historic property, nestled on the grounds where the Battle of Salado Creek once raged, is said to be haunted by the restless spirits of soldiers who fought and died on this land. Their blood-soaked history has woven itself into the very fabric of the inn, and to this day, their restless spirits wander the property, unable to escape the horrors they endured. The Battle of Salado Creek, fought in 1842, was a bloody confrontation between Texian and Mexican forces during the tumultuous period of the Texas Revolution. Though the battle ended in victory for the Texian forces, it came at a heavy cost. Many soldiers, both Texian and Mexican, lost their lives on the battlefield, and their souls are said to remain tethered to the land where they perished. Over time, a Victorian-style inn was built on this land, a seemingly serene retreat that could not be further from the horrific past that haunted it. The Black Swan Inn, with its stately architecture and picturesque surroundings, is a far cry from the chaotic battlefield that once tore this land apart. But despite the passage of time, something remains, something dark and inexplicable. Guests who visit the Black Swan Inn often find themselves struck by a peculiar, unsettling sensation as they approach the property. There's an undeniable heaviness in the air, as though the building itself carries the weight of history, of death, pain, and suffering. The land, soaked with the blood of soldiers, seems to hold an energy that refuses to dissipate. From the outside, the inn's Victorian architecture seems inviting. Grand windows, ornate trim, and towering spires give the impression of an old-world charm. But as guests step through the front door, the atmosphere shifts. The air feels thick, oppressive, and the dark wood paneling and long, creaking hallways lend an air of foreboding. There is a distinct feeling that something or someone might be watching. The stillness of the halls seems to echo with the weight of the past. It's not just the eerie silence that unsettles visitors. It's the sounds, unexplained noises, particularly the unmistakable sound of marching boots, are often heard echoing through the inn's long corridors. The rhythmic sound of boots on wood floors seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, creating an oppressive sense of being followed. But the sounds persist, as though they are trapped in an endless loop of their march into battle, never able to reach their destination. Many guests who stay at the Black Swan Inn report ghostly sightings, including apparitions of soldiers in 19th century military uniforms. These spectral figures appear as though they are walking in search of something, perhaps a way to return home, or perhaps something more tragic, a way to escape the horrors of the battlefield. Their faces, worn and anguished, are etched with the grief and fear of those who met their end in war. Sometimes these figures are seen in the inn's garden, staring into the distance as if waiting for orders that will never come. One of the most persistent hauntings at the inn involves a woman dressed in Victorian attire, seen often on the upstairs hallway. Her ghostly form glides silently through the corridor, her face pale and distant. It is said that she may be the spirit of a woman who once lived in the area, perhaps a lost love of one of the fallen soldiers. Those who have encountered her claim she is accompanied by the faint, comforting scent of lavender, a sweet yet melancholic fragrance that lingers long after the apparition has disappeared. Despite the tragic nature of these hauntings, there is something undeniably sad about the spirits that walk the halls of the Black Swan Inn. It is as if they are trapped in a moment, forever unable to move on from the pain they endured, whether from the horrors of war or from the heartbreak of lost love. The Black Swan Inn is not just known for its apparitions and eerie sounds. Guests have reported frequent poltergeist activity that adds another layer of mystery to the property. Lights flicker on and off unpredictably, doors slam shut without explanation, and objects seem to move on their own, shifting from one place to another as if guided by invisible hands. One particularly unsettling report involved a guest who was resting in a room when they felt an unexplained presence. They heard the sound of footsteps in the hall and, upon opening the door to investigate, found that the hallway was empty. The lights in the room flickered, and the air seemed to grow heavier, thicker. As the guests turned back to their bed, they noticed that a chair had been moved across the room, though they hadn't touched it. The feeling of being watched intensified, and the guest quickly left the room, their heart racing with a mix of fear and awe. In addition to the poltergeist activity, paranormal investigators have visited the inn, hoping to capture evidence of the supernatural. One investigation revealed even more disturbing phenomena: electronic voice phenomena, EVPs, captured eerie messages such as "help me" and "they're here." The phrases seemed to come from nowhere, echoing through the quiet halls as if the spirits were attempting to communicate with the living. Investigators were left shaken by the experience, unsure whether the voices were those of the soldiers who died in battle, or something darker, something more sinister that had made the inn its home. Perhaps the most chilling encounter to date occurred during a paranormal investigation, when a team of experts attempted to trace the source of the sound of marching boots that had echoed through the halls. Following the footsteps through the inn's dimly lit corridors, they entered a room that grew noticeably colder as they stepped inside. The temperature dropped rapidly, and an oppressive energy seemed to fill the space. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath. In the corner of the room, a shadowy figure was seen standing silently, its form vaguely human, but with no clear features. The figure was still, watching the investigators with an intensity that made the air feel suffocating. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the figure began to dissolve into the wall, as if it were not a solid entity, but something ephemeral, unable to be grasped or understood. The investigators were left stunned and speechless, unable to explain what they had just witnessed. Was it a soldier who had died in battle, trapped in time, or was it something darker, something more sinister, something that had taken up residence in the inn? The mystery of the Black Swan Inn remains unresolved. Is it truly haunted by the spirits of the soldiers who fought and died at Salado Creek? Or are there darker forces at play within its walls? The restless spirits that wander the property seem to have no peace, endlessly repeating the painful experiences of their lives and deaths. The haunting of the Black Swan Inn is a tragic one, a reminder that history's ghosts never truly leave, lingering in the places where they were forced to endure unimaginable suffering. For those brave enough to visit, the Black Swan Inn offers a chilling glimpse into the past, a place where the echoes of history and of lost souls can still be heard. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, there's no denying the eerie presence that hangs over the Black Swan Inn. And if you find yourself there late at night, listening to the sound of marching boots in the hall or catching a glimpse of a shadow in the corner, remember that some spirits, like the soldiers who fought at Salado Creek, may never truly rest. The Lady of the Lake. On the outskirts of Dallas, just beyond the bustling city streets and the modernity of everyday life, lies White Rock Lake, a serene body of water that has become the site of one of the most chilling legends in Texas. Beneath its calm surface and surrounded by trees that sway gently in the breeze, White Rock Lake hides a spectral secret, the haunting presence of the Lady of the Lake. Her tragic story has been whispered through generations, and her eerie appearances continue to be reported by locals and visitors alike. But who is this mysterious woman? And what is it that keeps her tethered to the lake, endlessly searching for something she can never find? The story of the Lady of the Lake begins with a young woman, radiant with joy and anticipation, on what should have been the happiest day of her life. It was her wedding day. She stood at the altar, her heart brimming with love for the man she was about to marry. Her gown was as white as the clouds that drifted lazily overhead, and her future seemed as bright as the sun that shone down upon her. But fate, cruel as it is, had other plans for her. There are differing versions of the story, and each one adds layers of sorrow to the tale. Some say that a terrible storm suddenly swept across the lake on her wedding day, carrying her off into the turbulent waters. The young woman, helpless against the force of nature, was drowned before she could even reach the safety of the shore. Others believe that her tragedy was not caused by nature's fury, but by her own heartache. On the very morning of her wedding, she received news that her fiancé had tragically drowned at sea, leaving her to face a life without the man she loved. Consumed by grief and unable to cope with the loss, she took her own life, choosing the cold, dark waters of White Rock Lake as the final resting place for her broken heart. Whether by storm or by sorrow, the result was the same. The young woman's life was tragically cut short on the day that should have been the happiest of her life. And ever since that day, her spirit is said to have been bound to the waters of White Rock Lake, wandering endlessly in search of the love she lost. Over the years, many who visit the lake, whether they are locals out for a peaceful evening walk or tourists looking for a scenic view, have reported unsettling encounters with a mysterious woman. Witnesses describe seeing a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair damp and disheveled, standing by the water's edge. She is often seen gazing into the water, her expression distant and sorrowful, as though she is waiting for someone who will never come. Those who have had the courage to approach her describe an overwhelming sense of sorrow and grief radiating from the woman. There is a palpable sadness in the air, as though the very atmosphere around her is thick with longing. When someone stops to offer help or speak to her, she doesn't respond. Instead, she silently climbs into the back seat of their car, seemingly without a word or a sound. The stranger, caught in a mix of fear and pity, drives off with the ghostly figure in tow, only to glance back to find that she has vanished, leaving behind nothing but a damp spot on the seat where she once sat. In some reports, the driver turns around only to find the back seat empty, the air heavy with a strange chill. The dampness, a physical reminder of her presence, is the only trace left behind. And yet, no one is ever able to explain how she disappears so quickly, as though she's never truly been there at all. This eerie phenomenon is not limited to those in cars. The Lady of the Lake, it seems, can cross the water with an ease that defies logic. One fisherman, who was casting his line in the quiet early hours of the morning, witnessed something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He looked out across the still water and saw a figure moving across it, walking gracefully as though the surface of the lake held no barrier at all. Her white dress billowed behind her as though caught by an unseen wind, and her bare feet made no sound as they seemed to glide across the water. The fisherman, frozen in disbelief, could only watch in stunned silence as the woman drew closer. Her face was serene, yet deeply sorrowful, and when her eyes locked with his, he felt as though she was looking into his very soul. There was an unmistakable sadness in her gaze, a deep longing that transcended words. She seemed to search his eyes for something, perhaps for someone who could ease her pain, or perhaps for the love she had lost long ago. Before the fisherman could react, the woman slowly turned and vanished beneath the surface of the water, leaving no trace behind. He stood there, staring at the lake, unsure of what he had just witnessed. Was it a trick of the light? A figment of his imagination? Or had he really seen the Lady of the Lake, whose sorrow and despair kept her forever tethered to the water? What makes the Lady of the Lake so unnerving is not just her spectral presence, but the overwhelming sense of grief that surrounds her. Those who encounter her often feel as though they are intruding on something sacred, something deeply personal. And there is an undeniable sense that she is trapped in time, endlessly searching for something she can never have. She is forever caught in the limbo of her tragic fate, mourning the love she lost and unable to find peace. Her sightings are most frequent during the dead of night, when the lake is shrouded in darkness and the air is thick with quiet stillness. The moonlight, casting an eerie glow on the water, only adds to the haunting beauty of the scene. It's as though the Lady of the Lake is not just a ghost, but a symbol of eternal sorrow. A reminder that some wounds never fully heal. For those who encounter her, the lake becomes a place of haunting beauty and sorrow, where the line between the living and the dead seems to blur. The Lady of the Lake is a figure suspended between two worlds, caught forever in the space between life and death, between love and loss. Despite the many sightings and reports, no one knows the true identity of the Lady of the Lake. Some say she is simply a tragic figure whose grief has turned her into a ghost, while others believe she is the vengeful spirit of a woman scorned by fate. But one thing is certain. Her story has become an integral part of the folklore surrounding White Rock Lake, a spectral secret that continues to captivate the imaginations of those who visit. For the Lady of the Lake, the search never ends. She wanders the waters, forever looking for the love she lost and the peace she can never find. Her tale is one of timeless sorrow, an eternal reminder that some spirits are bound by grief, unable to move on and forever trapped in the memory of a love that can never be reclaimed. And so, as you stand by the waters of White Rock Lake beneath the gaze of the moonlight, remember the tragic woman who waits in the shadows. If you listen closely, you may just hear the sound of her footsteps across the water or catch a fleeting glimpse of her figure standing by the shore, lost in time. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel so you stay up to date on all our latest spooky stories. If you got a good scare, be sure to like the video and share it with your friends if you think they can handle it. And don't forget to leave us a comment telling us which story left you looking over your shoulder.